Hey, yeah, this should go without saying, but your guys' stupidity knows no bounds. Do not harass anyone that is talked about or mentioned in today's video. Morons. No chair gag today. You guys don't deserve it. Howdy do, boogers. DenDenBMX here. And it has been quite some time since I made a video talking about the Balisong community being, well, the Balisong community. It's already been 2 years since I made that last Things I Hate About Balisongs video. And I always said I would make a part 2. And I put off making that video for so long that after a while it seemed like most of the hate and toxicity within the group had largely calmed down, which I was very happy to see. Yeah, for a little while there it was pretty peaceful, but I guess peace doesn't last. No, apparently nature's finally healing and the Balisong community is reverting back to its old ways. Stealing, bullying, egotistical weirdos, all the classic attributes of the Balisong community have come back with a vengeance within, like, the past 3 days. If you got into this hobby within the last couple years, you may have been bamboozled into thinking that this community is a warm, welcoming, accepting, friendly place where you can chill and have fun with some fidget toys. But in reality, it appears that this community is still filled with some of the most violently unintelligent people you will ever meet in your days, that have somehow developed a hilariously large ego over twiddling a toy in their hands. And they use that single-digit IQ of theirs to make the Star Wars fandom look sane, welcoming, and friendly in comparison. So I guess the community finally needs another stern talking to from its stay-at-home stepdad. And in a way, I guess we could call this an unofficial sequel to the Things I Hate About Balisongs video, because I really do hate some of the astoundingly stupid shit going on right now. Because thanks to a handful of people, the entire community looks like a bunch of brain-dead simians. And it makes getting into this hobby look like the most unappealing thing imaginable. We've got 2 different situations to discuss in this video. One revolves around a Balisong that went missing at the Airbnb that I stayed at during Blade Show and the controversy surrounding that. And the other thing I want to talk about is a situation where some flippers saw one of the most nothing arguments I've ever seen in my life, and they somehow used that as a green light to go start openly bullying and harassing another member of the community. But let's start with the missing / potentially stolen Balisong, because that scenario is one that I was directly involved with. If you watch my videos and you somehow haven't heard me say that I went to Blade Show in literally every single video that I've made for the last 2 months, I went to Blade Show this year, and it was awesome. And for housing while I was there, I pitched in on an Airbnb that was hosted by Pyro Flipper. Not DJ Eyeless Pyro or Jack Piatti Pyro. We are going to be talking about him later in this video, but in this part of the video, when I say Pyro, I am referring to Pyro Flipper on Instagram. But in this Airbnb was myself, Pyro Flipper, Lycan Blades, Homeless Man Flips, K-Sauce, and the Balisong Bear. And full transparency, I do consider myself to now be friends with all of those guys. I enjoyed rooming with them. We had a good time. We had lots of laughs, lots of flipping. We all took a bath together at one point. It was great. But then something happened that was very, very interesting. On our final night at the Airbnb, everyone else had already gone home except for myself, Pyro Flipper, and Lycan Blades, because we were waiting to go to the airport in the morning to fly home. But before we went to the airport, we spent maybe a solid hour tearing down that Airbnb looking for Lycan's Fellowship Blades Medusa, which had gone missing from his case. We didn't have any luck finding it, unfortunately, and eventually we just all had to go to the airport and go home. But once I got home, I actually got a message from Lycan saying that Pyro actually found his Medusa in his case, which was quite the relief, or at least it was at first, because apparently Lycan only just recently got his Medusa back from Pyro. But then in a shocking twist, Lycan ended up making a video talking about how Pyro essentially held his Medusa ransom, and once it finally returned to him, it was sent back in lesser condition. Now let's lay some more groundwork. I gotta fill you guys in on some lore before we go on. Now in Lycan's video, he explains that we all had to pitch around $200 to $300 to stay with Pyro at his Airbnb. Separately, a big part of going to Blade Show for some people is getting there really early in the morning and racing to try and purchase one of the limited number of brand new Balisongs available at Blade Show from various brands. Now some people, like Pyro, will give other people money to go wait in line and buy a Balisong for them while they are off in a different line buying a different Balisong. And Lycan apparently did this for Pyro on both day 1 and day 2. That information will be important here in a minute. For how LYCAN'S Medusa ended up in Pyro's case, let's jump to night 2. I was pretty beat, and I left Blade Show on night 2 a little bit earlier than what most people did, and LYCAN came with me. And for a while, it was just us in the Airbnb chilling. He was sharpening a knife, and I was raiding his case. Because I didn't bring any Balisongs to Blade Show. I tried his solo, which I absolutely loved. I tried his Talisong, I tried his Marins, and among other things, I tried his Fellowship Blades Medusa, which I flipped for all of about 2 seconds and then put right back in his case. Because at Blade Show, I wasn't as interested in flipping Balisongs that I've already tried before. And eventually, everyone else came back to the Airbnb, but I was specifically waiting for Pyro to come back so that I could raid his case and get some quick little footage of his Orca and his PDN among a few other Balisongs. I'm telling you all of this because according to Pyro Flipper, the reason LYCAN'S Medusa ended up in Pyro's case was because I mistakenly ended up putting it there. Allegedly. Now I am very well aware that you can only trust your own memory so much, and I personally have the memory of a dead squirrel. But I really want to stress that I don't remember doing that whatsoever. I got to flip a lot of people's Balisongs at Blade Show, and I made a conscious effort to not try and mix up other people's Balisongs. And the way I remember it was I put LYCAN'S case away long before I ever grabbed Pyro's case. And I don't know why I would have grabbed LYCAN'S Medusa while I was looking through Pyro's case, because again, I was going through his case to get footage of Balisongs that I haven't tried yet. I have owned a Medusa before, and as much as I like those Balisongs, flipping them wasn't really my priority at the time. And like I just said, I didn't bring any Balisongs to Blade Show because I wasn't going to pay $50 both ways to check a bag for my flights. Because what the fuck even is that? I only brought a backpack full of clothes and my chargers with me. So there was literally no way that I could have taken the Medusa. I'm not going to try and sneak a knife past the TSA in my carry-on bag. And I'm certainly not going to try and put it in my prison wallet. Have you seen what a Fellowship Blades Medusa looks like? I'm not built like that. But while I strongly do not believe that I would have misplaced LYCAN'S Medusa in Pyro's case, like I just said, you can only trust your own memory so much.
And we all make mistakes in the heat of passion, Jimbo.
But even if I did do that, which I really don't think I did, but even if I did do that, that doesn't really make what happened next, according to LYCAN, okay. Regardless of what my dumbass did or did not do, LYCAN'S Medusa still ended up in Pyro's case. Now, according to LYCAN, on around the 3rd day, Pyro started confronting him, saying that he owes him like $600-something, claiming that LYCAN didn't pay him for the Airbnb yet, and also claiming that he didn't give him back the money that he gave him for proxying knives on the first 2 days of Blade Show, which is something that LYCAN very strongly refutes. He got so worked up about it in his video that he kind of accidentally ended up recreating that meme of that kid being like, "You just disrespected a future United States Marine." And he went on to say that he swore an oath in his ROTC class to never lie, cheat, or steal. Basically the polar opposite of Eddie Guerrero. I'm mentioning that because while it is a bit silly to say that, the people who will say something like that unironically with their entire chest are usually about that. But once Pyro told LYCAN that he had his Medusa, he then turned it around and essentially held it ransom, saying that he still owes him like $600, and refused to answer any of LYCAN's messages about returning him his Medusa. Blade Show was in the beginning of June. It is like mid-August now. So regardless of what did or did not actually go down, Pyro held on to his Medusa for quite a long time. And apparently the only reason Pyro ended up sending the Medusa back to LYCAN was because K-Sauce, one of our other roommates, called him out in a group chat for not sending it back yet. And the very next day, LYCAN got a tracking number from Pyro. And of course, a few days later, he finally got his Medusa back in a packaging job that was incredibly half-assed. And according to LYCAN, his Medusa is no longer in the same condition that it previously had been in. And in LYCAN's video, he goes on to get very heated and basically calls Pyro a piece of shit because he was disrespectful to him the entire time. He had to sleep in a closet the first 2 nights, that the Airbnb that Pyro got was ass, among a myriad of other things. And in my humble opinion, I think LYCAN did get a little too worked up in his video and got a tad bit too accusatory. I wouldn't say anyone was exactly openly disrespectful to anyone else at the Airbnb. It was a house full of guys, and we talked to each other the way you would expect a bunch of guys to talk to each other. And while it is true that LYCAN did indeed sleep in a closet for a night or 2, that was also entirely his choice. And yeah, the Airbnb we got really wasn't the best, but I can't can't really blame Pyro for that. I mean, maybe if he didn't wait until a week or two before Blade Show to book the Airbnb, we could have gotten a nicer one for a better price. But all in all, it really wasn't that bad. But regardless of all that stuff, I have a very hard time believing that Lycan would owe Pyro that much money. Now, I'm not going to say Pyro was being intentionally malicious about this scenario and just openly lying that Pyro owed him money. But I am going to say that in my short experience of hanging out with Pyro, he does seem to be a little bit forgetful. Because just a few weeks ago, Pyro messaged me also claiming that I hadn't yet paid him for the Airbnb, even though that was like literally the first thing I did when I got there, and I paid him in front of all the other guys. But just for the love of the game, let's say that Lycan didn't actually pay Pyro for the Airbnb. Why would you then give him a substantial amount of money and trust him to go and buy Balisongs for you? And if he didn't immediately give you whatever money was left over, why would you then give him even more money to go do the exact same thing the very next day? I personally do not know who is telling the truth about the money, but I think regardless of all that, Pyro needs to keep a little bit better track of his money and like write down and take notes of who did and did not pay him. Because in my short time hanging out with Pyro, I already have experience of him mistakenly thinking that I didn't pay him when I did. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for the same thing to happen between him and Lycan. And according to Lycan's video, I don't even think Pyro absolutely knew for sure that Lycan was the reason he was missing like $600. Pyro was buying, selling, collecting, and shuffling around a lot of money throughout the entirety of Blade Show. And I personally would not have been able to keep up with all that just in my head. Now, Lycan also claims that Pyro stole his Medusa, and I don't know if I exactly believe that. If that is indeed true and he was openly lying to us while we were tearing down the Airbnb looking for his Medusa, that is some penis behavior. But currently, I don't believe that he intentionally stole his Medusa. I find it strange that I was the scapegoat for how it ended up in his case. I don't know, I have a hard time believing he would be that much of a butthole to steal someone else's Balisong. But even if it was an accident that Lycan's Balisong ended up in Pyro's case, no matter what, I think Pyro should have immediately sent him back his Medusa, because it's completely unrelated to the money issues you two were having. If you accidentally get a hold of someone else's Balisong that went missing, you send it back ASAP. That's just how that works. It doesn't matter if anything else is going on between you two, especially if you aren't even positive that Lycan is the reason why you were missing $600. You don't get to just hold something ransom that accidentally ended up in your possession. That's completely unrelated to whatever else was going on between you two. That's not how you professionally conduct business, which I know is very important to you, Pyro. And I personally think Pyro should apologize to Lycan for holding on to his Medusa for so long. I know that might be a little bit of a contentious opinion depending on whose side you're going to take in this scenario. But regardless of all of that stuff I just talked about, there is one thing that I absolutely believe Pyro needs to apologize to Lycan for. And that is how he shipped his Medusa back to him. Lycan unboxes the Medusa in his video. It is very clear that Pyro put absolutely zero effort into packaging and securing the Medusa.
This box over for the shit that they pulled, because now, as you can see, their packaging is pretty much shit. This is nothing. There's nothing in this box.
Which could have easily resulted in the Medusa getting damaged or even lost again. And that's not cool. And if that were to happen, it would just make Pyro look like an asshole. A lot of people in this community do this thing to where they think they've been done wrong in some way. And before even confirming that they've been done wrong, they go out and do that person dirty twice as hard. I remember that one little fucking idiot that doxed a child because he didn't immediately respond to him about a Balisong that he was selling and thought he was getting scammed when he wasn't, and he put that entire kid's family in danger. Actually make sure you're being done dirty before you retaliate, and really think hard about retaliating before you do. Because if something gets done wrong to you, then you're the victim. But if you retaliate and do them just as dirty, if not worse, than you think they did you, then suddenly you're not the victim anymore. You just both become the asshole. Now when it comes to the Medusa arriving damaged, I cannot really say here or there. I didn't really take like a mental inventory of of the Medusa's condition when I had it in my hands for all of 5 seconds. And I'm not gonna lie, in the video, it does seem like Lycan is being just a tad bit nitpicky about the damage. I'm not going to claim that Pyro intentionally damaged his Balisong. It would be crazy if he did, but also the other side of that coin is it would also be pretty fucking crazy if Lycan actually did owe Pyro like $600. Scenarios like this are always tricky. People lie. And even though I was the only third party directly involved in this whole fiasco, I only know so much. I only saw so much with my own eyes. Maybe Lycan's blowing this out of proportion. Maybe Pyro really did start his villain arc. Maybe Lycan started his villain arc. I'm not going to assume the worst of either of them because I like both of them. But I think both of their reactions to this scenario did make it quite a bit more stupid than it needed to be. Next year, we're all gonna have to stay at the same Airbnb again and all take a bath together and hash it out. K-Sauce, the Balisong Bear, and Harmless Man are all required to be in attendance too, even though they're not involved. But now, let's get into the really dumb shit. I already know I'm gonna get heated because this fiasco is next level bozo behavior. Now this involves two creators. One is DJ Eyeless Pyro or Jack Piatti Pyro, but so as not to confuse him with the other Pyro we were just talking about, I'm going to call him by his real name, Jack. And the other creator involved in this is Shell Wong. There are a few other losers that involved themselves into this scenario, but we're gonna talk about them here in a little bit. But for now, let's break down how this embarrassing ass scenario went. To my knowledge, this all started when Jack left a comment on one of Shell's videos saying this: "How do you know if you like how it flips when all you did was fan over and over again? And then did like 3 chaplains and a twirl here and there. I legitimately don't understand. What am I missing here? Please take some more time to flip it and get some more informed opinions instead of just doing one fan and immediately being impressed. Videos like this need to be more educated, and especially when speaking in a matter-of-fact kind of way." That is all. So basically, Jack is mad that in one of Shell Wong's videos, she flipped a Balisong, did a couple basic tricks, and then said she liked the Balisong. What exactly is the issue here? How do you know if you like how it flips when all you did was fan over and over again? You know what the very first thing I do when I get a Balisong? I just do a basic fan opening, which is the very first thing I did when I received this LDY Frank. And just based off that, I already knew that I wasn't really going to jive with this Balisong that much. Because just by doing this, I could already tell how slippery the handles on this Balisong were going to be. And I could also tell it was pretty blade bias, which resulted in a rather unsatisfying feeling fan. When a Balisong has good grip and I can feel my fingers hook into the handles, I know that I'm going to have enough leverage to generate enough power for a good fan. And if the Balisong has a nice balance and weight distribution, it's going to be a satisfying feeling fan. And if a Balisong can do that, then I know it has a pretty good chance of being a Balisong that I'm going to enjoy. But if a Balisong can't do that, I already know that I'm not going to like it as much as other Balisongs that can do that. Also, considering how insanely subjective this hobby is, it's a little weird to try and criticize someone over their unique way of finding out if they like a Balisong or not, because it's different for everybody. Videos like these need to be more educated, especially when speaking in a matter-of-fact way. There's no speaking in a matter-of-fact way when it comes to reviewing Balisongs. Like I just said, Balisongs are an insanely subjective thing. There are objective things about Balisongs, like weight distribution, materials used, etc. But how an individual reacts to that stuff and how they react to how the Balisong flips, it's all subjective. Which is why I think it's so cool that so many people review Balisongs, because you can get a million different perspectives on the same exact Balisong. Now, Shell responded to Jack's comment with, "That's what I can do. I'm not as good of a flipper as you. If you don't like it, don't watch. It's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it." Which is actually a perfectly fine response, and kind of the point of me making this video was to come here and say that. But she already said that, so I guess I just came. And then after that, Jack replied with, "Don't make a review style video if you can't actually talk about it. In my opinion, if that's all you can do flipping wise, get better. You've been flipping long enough that you should be able to do more than that, especially with how much money you've invested into the hobby." Now, Jack, I love you. You are one of my favorite people in this community. But what's happening here? Why are you all of a sudden turning into a gatekeeper? Trying to tell someone that they have to be at a certain level in order to be allowed to have an opinion on a Balisong or create Balisong content is very gatekeepy. Does that mean I shouldn't be allowed to make Balisong reviews, considering that you very recently rated my flipping a 5 out of 10? And I've been flipping since 2010. Does that mean Brandon Baker or Rob Heath or Dasuko or Artsy or anyone else that isn't at your level shouldn't be allowed to make Balisong content or Balisong reviews? Also, where is this energy for all the other people that make Balisong reviews that don't even flip the Balisong in their video? People like that have been around since before even you and I. Not everyone watches Balisong content just for how good the person can flip. There's some creators out there that are amazing flippers, but their content is a snooze fest. There's some creators out there that can't do more than a few basic openings, but I like watching their content more because they're an entertaining person. Yeah, it's really cool watching really talented flippers like you, Jack, but there's some people out there that actually prefer to watch creators that aren't as skilled at Balisong tricks because they can actually relate to them more than they can to the more skilled flippers. Also, why are we suddenly trying to make Balisong flipping a dick measuring contest? Like, when did this become a competitive sport? It's fine if you're competitive, but be competitive with other people that want to be competitive. That's what BaliComp is for. I don't care if it's BMX, guitars, or Balisongs. I do all this shit because I have fun doing it. I'm not here trying to look cool or trying to impress anybody. And when someone comes into my space trying to make that stuff competitive, I just want to smash their nuts in a mailbox and get as far away from them as I possibly can. Because the people that try and turn my chill hobbies into a fucking contest are the most annoyingly unpleasant people to be around. Not everyone gets into flipping to become a world-class flipper. Some people just like it for the fidget aspect it has. Some people just like them to EDC them. Some people, like Shell, mostly just collect them. There's no wrong way to get into this hobby. If you like Balisongs, you like Balisongs. And I don't care if you've been flipping for 3 minutes or if you were the very first person to ever touch a Balisong. You can, and you should, make Balisong content. We're not trying to cure cancer or end world hunger here, okay? There's no minimum skill requirement for this hobby. There's no stakes here. We are a group of grown-ass adults playing with fidget toys. Now, being passionate about Balisongs is perfectly okay. I'm passionate about it. I know Jack is passionate about it, but when you somehow develop an ego about it and use that as an excuse to start judging how other people enjoy this hobby, then you're just being an ass. Jack, please quit being a gatekeeping goober. The termite dick energy that comes with that does not look very good on you. I know for a fact that you're hung like Morgan Freeman. If you don't like Shell or her content, which you are going to go on to say multiple times, then don't watch her content. No one has you pinned down like the guy from Clockwork Orange forcing you to watch Shell's content. Now, Shell was pretty nice in her first reply, but after Jack kept pressing it, she basically just told Jack to fuck off. She also put up an Instagram story for like all of 2 seconds, I think, calling Jack toxic. And I guess that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because after that, Jack DM'd her a Stephen King-sized novel. Now, before I read this encyclopedia to you, there is a very large elephant in the room that I have not yet mentioned. Shell Wong is trans, which is important context for the rest of this video. Maybe not exactly for Jack's DM, but it's going to get increasingly important as this video goes on. Now, as for what Jack DM'd her, which he also went on to share to his story, you know what? I'm going to bring this to the DMs. I was going to leave it at that last comment, but nah. You called me toxic, but I actually came about this trying to be nice. You are unironically one of my least favorite fucking people in this community. I don't like these new gen Bally tubers, but you take the cake, and more for being the actual worst. You are disliked by so many flippers who won't talk about you due to fears of you just rebutting them with they're transphobic, that's why they don't like me. And I'm so fucking tired of it. Sure, I can be toxic, but at least you can say that and I won't shut you down. Nobody can criticize you because you can't handle it at all. Your music sucks, and you went to an event before you were a Bally person with COVID. How can you not be considerate to anyone at all? I've seen your apology. Get a fucking grip on life, you actual troglodyte. Who do you think you are? Who? You are an actual fucking nobody. You don't contribute anything but garbage fucking filler content. I remember when you uploaded 4 times in a single day. You don't make content. You make brainless fucking drivel that you start up on OBS. Jack, I do not see how in any way Shell deserved to be treated like that. Especially after the nothing argument that you two just had. You came to her channel and basically said, I don't like your content. Get better. And she very respectfully told you to just leave her alone, and you kept pressing it, and then once she told you to fuck off, you sent her that? Because she called you toxic on her story? Which really isn't incorrect? This is just bullying, dude. Jack, I remember you and I became friends because I stood up to a bunch of assholes in the community that were giving me shit when I first started making Balisong content over the dumbest things imaginable. But Jack, in this DM, you look and sound like Nardath, 50 Blades of Gray, Culturephile, Dubmo, all these other fucking losers that came after me way back when. Actually, what you said to Shell is like 10 times worse than anything those fuckers ever said to me. And it is mind-blowing how uncalled for it was. Now I want to focus on the part where he said that no one can criticize Shell because she's just going to turn it around and say that they're being transphobic. You want to know how I know that that's bullshit? Because, well, for one, she never once said you were being transphobic during your guys' argument. But also, guess what? Once Jack posted that on his story, that gave some less thans in the community the A-OK to also start messaging Shell. What did they start messaging her? Take a wild fucking guess. For this next part of the video, I have to put up a trigger warning for transphobia. So if that is a sensitive topic for you, maybe don't watch this next part. Let's see. Sick flips on Instagram. I'm not going to read your message, but I'm going to assume you're either 10 years old or you dropped out of school in the 3rd grade. At least make sure you know how to construct a proper sentence or, you know, spell before you try going to insult people. I would advise you to spend less time disappointing your parents and maybe spend more time paying attention in English class. Froggy Man flips. You cannot imagine how disappointing and how much of a bummer it was to see that you were low enough to start joining in on all this shit. You're not a child anymore, man. Do fucking better. Jared Paidea? Who is this? Let me see. Based off his Instagram, I'm getting hard my daddy's credit card paid for all of this vibes. Oh, it's Clockwork Flips. What? An entitled, pretentious little boy being transphobic? No! Why have I never been less surprised about anything in my fucking life? That's actually kind of funny. My first experience with this kid was watching him try to fat shame Jack. And that right there told me everything that I needed to know about him. Seems very hyper-focused on Shell's appearance. You know, I've never been one to criticize other people for their looks because, well, for one, I look like Wreck-It Ralph, but I'm also not a superficial cornball. But I just think it is fucking hilarious that a guy that looks like Goob from Meet the Robinsons thinks he has any place bullying someone else over their appearance. And then he's got the gall to say to Shell that a flag can't hide the content of your character being mid as fuck. I have only ever seen you do 2 things in this community. Be transphobic to someone and try and fat shame someone else. But the content of Shell's character is mid as fuck? That's actually hilarious. Your parents' money can't hide the fact that you're a superficial meat-riding loser. It would surprise me if you weren't unironically paying $50 a month for Hustlers University. Or, I'm sorry, having your parents pay for it, whatever, semantics. I love people like you. You always pick the easiest target imaginable to punch down on. And you go in on them with your entire chest because it's the only way you can get out all those pent-up emotions you have from your parents not giving you enough attention when you were a kid. But you already know that this little twink wouldn't be able to eke out a single word of this little spiel in person, let alone maintain eye contact. You can see right through people like this, and behind their little glass ego is nothing but insecurity. I'm done wasting my breath on these failed abortions. But thank you all for being a shining example of why it's a fucking embarrassment to be in this community. Now, after receiving all that garbage, Shell went on to post to her story that thanks to Jack, a bunch of people in the community were now coming at her being transphobic. And Jack went on to embrace his inner American, and he took zero accountability. Now, Jack, I am here to tell you that all of that hateful transphobic garbage that Shell received only after you posting your DM to her on your story, which she didn't fucking deserve any of, it is all 100% your fault. You posted the entire argument on your story. You are a person of influence. Even if you are not transphobic, clearly a lot of your followers are. And when they see you getting into it with someone, especially if that someone's trans, they're gonna use that as an excuse to go and be transphobic to them. Also, get the fuck out of here with that "it was just constructive criticism" bullshit. I can see right through that from a mile away. Everyone knows your main intention with that initial comment wasn't just trying to be helpful. And if you were trying to be helpful, you did a pretty bad job at it. Constructive criticism doesn't mean I get to be an asshole to you under the guise of giving advice. And after that first comment you left, she very politely told you to just not watch her stuff. But you kept pressing it, and then eventually she just told you to fuck off. off, and then you freaked out over that? I do think it's interesting that Cockwork had to also point out that Shell was apparently talking to kids about her divorce, I guess? And you know the only reason he said that was because Jack also mentioned that in his story. But I find that a very interesting thing to criticize. Didn't Will Hirsch also very recently just make a video talking about his divorce? I know kids watch him, but I saw nothing but unanimous support for Will in that video. How come it's only nothing but hate when Shell does the exact same thing? Like, I'm just confused. Like, was her video titled, "Hey, only the kids that watch me, let's talk about my divorce"? People also criticize Shell for the quality of her videos, but I see no criticism towards everyone else who puts an equal amount of effort or lack thereof into their content. People criticize Shell for lowballing offers on Balisongs and then selling them for top dollar, but I see no criticism towards everyone else in the community that has been doing that for years. Everything that I've ever seen Shell get criticized for is not exclusive to her, but she is far and away getting the most shit for it. Why do you think that is? I'll give you guys a hint. It starts with a T. You know, I never even found out that Shell was trans from her. Everyone just has to mention it whenever she gets brought up into discussion. And it's always usually something like, "Oh, Shell Wong, she's trans. I don't like her." But it's not because she's trans. Now everyone can scream to the fucking stars that it's not because she's trans. But when the cards are down, it's really obvious to see that you guys are just full of shit. And I didn't even have to be a bleeding heart for the trans community in this video in order to prove that. You have all single-handedly proven with your own actions that you will not hesitate to turn into transphobic garbage people if you think it's justified, which it never is. If a trans person is a piece of shit, then you should be able to call them a piece of shit without ever once mentioning that they're trans, because they are two unrelated things. And if they turn around and try to call you transphobic for that, it should be effortless for you to disprove it. I don't know why Jack's saying that everyone's afraid of being called transphobic. If you're not transphobic, I don't know why you'd be worried about being called transphobic. You're not going to be called transphobic if you're not transphobic. Now, I don't have the time nor the crayons to explain to you all why transphobia is based in everything except facts and science. I do not give a fuck who you are, or what your religion is, or your politics, or what your beliefs are. But if you treat someone as less than human because of the color of their skin, their sexual preference, or their gender identity, then you are a failure of a human being, and you deserve to have your shit rocked. You know what one of the most common things I heard at Blade Show was? I literally heard it maybe 50 times. "Oh, I don't care if you're gay or trans or whatever. I just don't like it when they make it their whole personality." What the fuck does that even mean? I don't care if you're gay, just don't express it in any way, shape, or form. I don't care if you're trans, just don't represent that at all and just be a hollow fucking shell of a person when you're in my vicinity. I don't hate women, just don't be one around me. Is it only okay to make it your personality if you only objectify and sexualize women? Saying you don't hate the LGBTQ community, but you don't want them to express themselves in literally any way is an oxymoron. Y'all need to do better. It's fucking pathetic. Jack and everyone else needs to go apologize to Shell. Next Balisong video, maybe we're gonna shit on the Benchmade Necron. I'm done with all you pea-brain fucking losers. Can't believe I associate myself with you fucking clowns.